Hello, my name is Israel Olaore, and I'm privileged to be part of the first in the series on education put on by the Phoenix Royal Foundation. And I'm pleased to be able to present one of the topics that have been slated in the series that they are presenting in the month of September. Without wasting much time, I will just go ahead and share my screen so that we can begin. So I'm presenting on understanding sustainable education in the purview for Sustainable Development Goal number 4 in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Like I said, my name is Israel Olaore, Dr. Olaore. I currently reside in California, where I serve as lead principal and head of school for Glendale Adventist Academy. Prior to that, I worked at Babcock University in Nigeria, where I served as university pastor and later on served as chief of staff to the vice chancellor, president vice chancellor, and also served as director of the GDS program. The GDS program being the General Studies program for the university, before I got a call to come to California to be the principal of the 113-year-old Glendale Adventist Academy, one of the leading K-12 schools in the Seventh-day Adventist Church system here in Southern California and in the United States as a whole. So it's a privilege to be invited to be the first presenter in the series by the Phoenix Royal Foundation. So let's get right into the subject matter. We're talking about education. We're talking about sustainable education. And I will be sharing the objectives of this particular presentation. The objectives of this webinar, it's being put together by the organizers, is first to promote and advance the goal of the SDG4 or Sustainable Development Goal 4 by making the participants understand what quality education entails to the United Nations. So what does quality education mean to the United Nations? So we're going to be looking at that aspect that deals specifically with this Sustainable Development Goals, and with special emphasis on number 4, which deals with quality education. And then the other objective of this webinar is to leverage education as a panacea to solve the problems of Nigeria, like corruption, inequalities, and the shortage of persons of integrity among the leadership and the citizens. This is quite obvious, but I just needed to reiterate that as the objectives, the focus that the organizers had in mind when they put this together. And the global mandate that we have that propels us to talk about this SDG4 is one that was given September 15th, along with 16 others that make 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, transforming our world between now and 2030. So the Sustainable Development Goals are 17 in number, the first one being to end poverty and to end hunger. That's number 2. Number 3, for good health and well-being. Number 4, quality education, and we're going to go deeper into that. Number 5, gender equality. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. Number 7, affordable and clean energy. Number 8, decent work and economic growth. Number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure in place. Number 10, reduce inequalities. 11, sustainable cities and communities. Number 12, responsible consumption and production. Number 13, climate action. That is taking positive action about climate change issues. Number 14, life above water. That is, how do we maintain life above water? Life below water, and then life on the land. Life below water. That is the quality of our waters. That's how do we stop issues of water pollution, and the sources of our water, and then life on land. How do we maintain that in the realm of climate change and sustainable land use? Number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions that can support peace and justice. Number 17, partnerships with the goals. So how do these goals relate to one another, and how can they promote and make sure that the expected outcomes are met? So that's just a synopsis of the 17 goals of the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals. And number 4, which has to do with education, is what we're going to be looking at. But let's take a look at what does it mean to have sustainable development. Sustainable development has been defined as development that meets the needs of the present, where we are right now, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So what world am I going to leave for my children? What world would I leave for my grandchildren that I'm seeing today? How would what I'm doing now impact the generations yet unborn, and even those who are already born that we will be handing it over to? So that's what sustainable development talks about. And sustainable development 4, goal 4, talks about quality education, which, excuse me, ensures inclusive and equitable quality education that promotes lifelong learning opportunities for all. There are key elements in that synopsis of number 4. We're talking about making sure that this is possible, then ensuring not just any kind of education, but inclusive education, which does not leave anybody out, that is equitable, not just equitable, but quality, not just a lot for everybody, but good quality education, and the education that promotes lifelong learning. So learning along the span of life and opportunities for everybody. So those who are older, those who are younger, the whole gamut of the lifespan. So that's what quality education is looking at from 2015 all the way to 2030, the 15 years of the focus of this sustainable development goal, number 4. So the number 4, sustainable development goal, equal quality education, has 7 goals or 7 targets within this goal. And we'll take a look at the targets. And number 1, we see focuses on primary education and secondary education, free primary and free secondary education. Whereas number 2 focuses on equal access to quality pre-primary education. So that covers all the way from age 1, preschool, all the way to probably 18 for secondary. So we're looking at from pre-primary in number 2, target 2, primary and secondary in target 1. So that covers that age range. And then target 3, equal access to affordable technical, vocational, and higher education. So we're talking about college, we're talking about technical schools, we're talking about polytechnics, we're talking about places like the School of Agriculture and places where students can get access to affordable technical, vocational, and higher education. So now we are covering to adulthood by target number 3. But target number 4 talks about increasing the number of people with relevant skills for financial success. So we're talking about informal education, probably in trade and other ways of helping people gain access to financial success, things that can help them sustain themselves, in life. So that's that informal dimension of education, but relevant skills. Those who are learning a trade, maybe they're learning how to sew, they're learning the auto mechanic, they're learning things that can help them to become independent and have a sustainable life now that can hold them and then take them into a place where they can survive and be on their own. Now, target number 5 talks about eliminating all discrimination in education. So people with, different abilities, people who have hearing impairment or sight challenged, or their limbs, or name it, any kind of other abled people need to have access to education. I remember vividly that at Babcock University, we were able to provide, education for sight-challenged individuals. I know some, and I'm very grateful that we could be part of that era to make sure that nobody is excluded and was discriminated against because of the different kinds of abilities that they have. And then the number 6 talks about universal literacy and numeracy. Universal literacy and numeracy, meaning that the goal or the target is saying at least let there be capacity to read and capacity to add and subtract, numeracy. Being able to know numbers and work with numbers, is critical to the whole learning process. And moving right along, it says target number 7, education for sustainable development and global citizenship. So we're raising people who can survive and who can hold their own any part of the world, global citizens. That is the kind of education we're looking at. I live here in California. I've lived in Nigeria. I've traveled to, the Asian countries. I've traveled to South America and other parts of the world. So being able to sustain yourself and live well any part of the world where you find yourself. That's what goal number 7 is focusing on. And then within the goals, we have other subsets of this target. 1, building and upgrading inclusive and safe schools. That's as far as providing good infrastructure for students to be able to feel safe to learn. And then B, expand higher education scholarship for developing countries. So if you don't have the education where you reside, to be able to have the scholarship to go get it elsewhere. That's part of what we're talking about. And then C, increase and the supply of qualified teachers in developing countries. So these are the subsets of the 7 goals. Now, we're moving right along. This is a summary of all the 7 goals and ABC of the 7 targets, rather, of goal number 4 of the SDGs. Now, in Nigeria, we have our own office of the SDGs, and Princess Ajoke Urilope Adefulure, former Deputy Governor of Lagos State, is the person who is holding that office. And I visited the website, and they're doing quite a few things that are commendable, that I observed. But I wanted just to take a look at the implementation of these SDGs in Nigeria. And in looking at some things that have been written, And to summarize what is happening in Nigeria, the quality implementation of the quality of education, how to implement the quality of education in Nigeria, the challenge number one that we found out is that Nigeria is ranked 120th out of 136 countries regarding the quality of primary education. That is a big challenge. That means that we are way behind when it comes to quality primary education. And that means there's work to be done, you know. And if you look, I was looking still, there was another article that says achieving quality education for all in Nigeria. And the writer of this article said that in their research, they discovered a school, local education authority primary school in the city gate in Abuja. The school has 360 students, and one of the classes, 87 students, 87 students in one classroom. That's just mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. 87 students share 8 tables and chairs. That's very, very challenging. You know, I can't compare apples with oranges, but the kind of wealth base that we have as a country over the years puts us past this kind of showing. But these children want to learn. They want to expand their world. And we need to be able to make that available, accessible to them, and not deprive them and give them substandard things. But going on, we have the official challenges that have been earmarked as the challenges that education is facing in Nigeria. First, teacher absent, student non-attendance, irrelevant and culturally irresponsive curricula, poor pedagogical content knowledge, dilapidated structures, insecurity, inadequate funding. We see all these things, but I want us to look at the funding of education in Nigeria. You know, it says here, the official statement of the UN from its voluntary national review document that was put out not too long ago. It said a key challenge confronting the country, that is Nigeria, has to do with out of school children, a demographic challenge that relates to an interplay between employment, SDG, poverty, SDG, education, SDG, digital economy, SDG, with a population of 200 million people and regional disparities that are very significant. You know, Nigeria, the Southwest is said to have 87% of its children who are able to read at least a part of the statement, while 17% of children in the Northeast are able to read part of the statement. So the disparity is huge. And the funding, we say that only 1.6% of the GDP is devoted to education. I was looking at those figures, and in the budget for 2020, I think the amount devoted to 2019, the percentage devoted to education was 7.04 as compared to 2018, when the amount devoted to education was 7.4% of the budget of the country. You know, so here we know that funding is a critical factor. The UNESCO suggests 26% of the budget of a nation to be devoted to education to lift the masses. Because when you educate the masses and you lift them, it impacts the GDP. It impacts the employability. It impacts, you know, production. It impacts so many other areas, even manufacturing, because skill sets are developed that can help people to hold reasonable positions that can boost the gross domestic product of a country. But if only 7% of the total budget is allocated towards education, then we can see the outcome on this other end of not having people who are capable to cope in the scheme of things as we have it today. So the 2020 budget, current figures as accessed from the Office of the Budget Office of Nigeria, tells us that 501 billion, 501.64 billion was allocated to recurrent expenditure, salaries, benefits, pensions, things that has to do with human resource or human capital. That was the lion's share, just to keep the people paid and taken care of. Then 185.34 billion was allocated to capital expenditure, and that amount includes the 112 billion that is allocated to the Universal Basic Education Commission that is in charge of primary education to Nigerians. And we see that that amount has been increasing over time, even though the percentages are still low compared to the inflation rate. And some of the money for 2019 was reduced so that they can help with the INEC office to host the elections for 2019. So that said, we know that education is not getting as much as it could, but in the scheme of things, there is budgetary allocation that is going for education. And we see that the TET fund, transfers to Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET fund, for infrastructure projects in tertiary institution is what most federal schools wait for to be able to do anything substantial. And that is also commendable as far as the funding of education is concerned. I was reading something by Professor Toyin Falola recently, where he said that, having worked with a lot of private universities and federal state universities, he sees the nimbleness and the flexibility that the private universities have to be able to do more and to do it successfully compared to the older and even newer federal tertiary institutions. And he suggests that, maybe part of the TET fund could be allocated towards scholarships for students to attend good private universities in Nigeria. I see that TET fund, is given to scholarship for students to attend universities abroad. But Toyin Falola's proposal is that these funds can be allocated to students to study in private universities because they know when they're going to start and they know when they're going to finish, not to deal with strikes and other things that have, like a life of its own that happens in the federal and state universities. Anyway, we want to also commend that within the budget, there are other allocations that are packaged in there, but the sharing of this amount, the 501 billion, goes to 28 departments, agencies, and parastatals in the Federal Ministry of Education, 44 federal universities, many of them are being started, and then 25 polytechnics, 21 colleges of education, and 104 unity schools. This is where all the monies are going. In the 2020 budget, additional funding was provided to take care of provisions for security infrastructure in 104 colleges. Then another 1.9 billion to take care of 6 federal science and technology colleges. Then 3.4 billion for scholarship allowances and 1.3 billion to 5,000 federal teachers scheme. So there is funding, but how is the money getting to the places it's supposed to get to make these things happen? That's another question that we have to deal with. So the official problems are there, but we have other things that are impinging and not allowing those things to happen the way they should so that we can fulfill this SDG4. The private sector can participate. And I've been part of Babcock University, and I know, to the glory of God, the kind of impact Babcock University has had on the education sector in Nigeria. There are so many private universities now, 79 private universities, and very good ones, Covenant, Redeemers, so many beautiful private universities in Nigeria that are making an impact to push this agenda forward and to make sure that we have people who are capable to take their place in making Nigeria progress as a nation among the sisterhood of nations. But we know that one of the things that needs to happen so that this can move smoothly without a hitch is value-based education. And that is what a lot of Christian and other organizational institutions, tertiary, secondary, primary, can provide value-based education where students can get morality and integrity, because that is what differentiates between someone who is educated and someone who is just clever. C.S. Lewis is quoted here as saying, education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make a man a more clever devil. And we've seen that. We've seen that in Nigeria. Some people don't carry a gun to rob, but they rob with their pen. They rob with their influence. They make things just impossible to allow the monies to get where it will make a difference. I'll leave this slide here so you can meditate on it for a minute without having to say much about it. The complexities of education in Nigeria, knowledge versus integrity. That is, knowledge without integrity gives you corruption. Knowledge versus religion. When a religious organization says that Western civilization or Western knowledge will be something that is a curse, then those children are alienated, marginalized. They cannot get the benefits of the education they need. No wonder we have the 1.7% of literacy in that part of the country, the northeastern part of the country. Knowledge versus politics, that is allocation of resources. And the resources being allocated to raise the human capital, to raise the social elements in the dimension of education that will help people attain to their desired skills or desired academic pursuits. Is the money going to where we need it to be? Then knowledge versus economics. A family wants to send their children to school, but they need the same children to trade in the morning or in the afternoon. So the children are practically laboring to make sure the family is economically okay. So that is a challenge, part of the complexities that we have to deal with as a nation, okay? But the resolution of the dilemma is that godliness plus contentment equals great gain. That is my own summary. Godliness with contentment equals great gain, which means that value-based education will help a person to be contented with what they have so that they can use their education to bring an uplift to their community and not siphon everything for themselves, because that's what corruption does. Corruption says, I need this all for myself. If I have it, then I'll be secured for life. My children will be secured for life. What about other people's children? They don't care. And that is the very sad commentary of how most of our institutions in Nigeria have been grounded to a halt because people just want to grab things just for themselves and not be contented with what they have. Okay. The impact of covetousness on education. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some have coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." So we see that the love of money is one of the things that have made people not to give much attention to education. We have people in parliament who get enough money to pay the salaries of 40, 50 teachers in a whole year. They get those salaries in a month, which is almost, there's no equity in that. There's no way we can support that and allow those people who teach our children to be the ones suffering the most when it comes to remuneration. And then the children get they get the short end of the stick, And what I've attributed that to is what's, in political philosophy is called, the divine right of kings. I deserve to get this. I earned it by my right of being a politician. I earned it because the people put me there. And because the people put me there, whatever comes to me is mine, and I rule over it like a king. But kings and leaders are meant to serve. They are meant to give of themselves to the people they've been called to serve, So I think it's very important, the example we have of a selfless leader. Jesus in the Bible was a selfless leader who, in his glory and his majesty, let go of everything and gave of himself. So the love of money is one of the big things that is holding back the SDG4, that is not allowing it to have its full potential in our dear country, Nigeria. The corruption at different levels is also another thing that I've seen. Even in the school system, the methods employed at miracle centers to facilitate the malpractice, bribing exam invigilators, allowing students in the hall to cheat, allowing questions to be brought into the exam hall, writing things on the board for students to copy. I feel that's so preposterous. How can you give the same answer to all the students and they'll write the same thing for the same center? And I, being an examiner, will look at it and not fail that center. If I were an examiner, I'll fail the centers wholesale. But I guess the corruption has gone on for so long that everybody along the pipeline is paid, except for those who choose that they're not going to be part of the corruption. And one of my friends, who is a principal, told me just a few weeks ago that the vice principals in her school downed tools because she refused to let them help students cheat in the NECO exam. I said, why do they need to help students cheat in an exam? Private schools, private secondary schools in Nigeria that charge exorbitant money for their students in tuition still help students to cheat. Why would you help a student to cheat if you have highly qualified teachers who can prepare the students before the exams? Why do you need to help a student cheat? Because you want 100% at WAEC. For me, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. Morality is gone out of the window. If you let a child cheat, what are you teaching the child? That life is about cheating? Life is about doing it and getting it anyhow. I guess that's unfortunate because of the DNA, the wiring of corruption that makes people think, oh, I can help you by helping you cheat. What kind of help is that? So that's another dimension that is really breaking down the very fabric of our educational system. And then teachers using students. I'm talking about teachers using students like commodity. A teacher we heard about in my alma mater, OAU, University of Ife. That's where I got my bachelor's degree in philosophy, before it became Obafemi Awolowo University. That public record shows one of the professors there asking a girl to sleep with him, sexual intimacy, sexual misconduct, so that he can, give her grades. And that happens all the time. Teachers taking advantage of students, that is another problem that is impeding the progress of education in our dear country. Okay. So my understanding of how we can solve this, it says knowledge plus the fear of God equals good success. The fear of God. The fear of God. Not going to have an all-night prayer meeting so that God can help you to cheat in the exam. That's just an oxymoron for me, or you go to a pastor to pray over your pen, and so that you'll be able to write. What is that? Or that you have a charm that will not let you be caught in the exam room. Those for me are just nonsensical, to say the least. What the Bible says in Proverbs 9, verse 9, instruct a wise man and he will be wise still. Teach a righteous man and he will increase his knowledge. So righteousness and knowledge go hand in hand. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So the fear of God gives you wisdom and understanding. For through wisdom, your days will be multiplied and your years will be added to your life. So that is the key. The fear of God is the element that is missing, the missing piece in the Nigerian educational structure. Among leaders in the educational structure, I'm talking about people in academic leadership, all the way to the students. I remember a story while I was still in Nigeria, a school, a military secondary school. Parents were trying to get their children into that school in Lagos, and it's a prestigious school. But here were the parents trying to barge into the school to help their children cheat in the common entrance. So they had to bar them. And his parents were trying to climb over the wall, doing different things to help their children cheat so that they can get into this prestigious school. How appalling, how disgraceful. What lesson are we giving our children? And the remedy is still the fear of God. Job 28:28 says, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn from evil is understanding. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So the fear of God is my panacea for good quality education. Funding, yes, but the fear of God most of all. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter about education. James 3:17, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism, and it's always sincere. That is the kind of wisdom that comes from above. That's the wisdom that comes with the fear of God. And by the way, the Bible also says that Jesus is the wisdom of God. Jesus is the wisdom of God. So I'll leave you with those thoughts. And here's a question I want you to meditate over as you come to the end of this presentation. What can religious organizations do to bring a positive outcome in the current challenge of education in Nigeria? What can religious organizations do to mitigate the impact of education, poor quality education, and bringing high quality education in Nigeria? Think about that. And you can share your comments with us as you get it. Just email that to us or send it to us in your chat wherever this message is posted. Thank you very much, and God bless you.